The sterile white walls of the delivery room seemed to hold their breath. The air was thick with a mixture of antiseptic, sweat, and pure, unfiltered anticipation. For Marcus, every beep of the heart monitor was a drumbeat counting down to the greatest moment of his life. He held his wife Clara's hand, whispering words of encouragement, his voice trembling with an overwhelming love. His world was about to be complete. On the other side of the bed stood Dr. Alan Carter, a man with silver hair and eyes that had witnessed the miracle of birth more than 10,000 times. He was a pillar of calm in the storm of childbirth, his movements precise, his voice a steady reassurance. He had seen it all, or so he thought. "One more push, Clara. You are doing wonderfully," Dr. Carter said, his voice cutting through the tension. With a final, heroic effort, a new life entered the world. A powerful, healthy cry filled the room, shattering the silence and washing away all the pain and anxiety. It was a boy. Tears of pure joy streamed down Marcus's face as he kissed Clara's forehead. He was a father. Their family was real. The nurses quickly went to work, their actions a familiar and comforting ballet. They cleaned the baby, checked his vitals, and wrapped him in a soft, warm blanket. Marcus could not take his eyes off his son. He was perfect. He saw his own eyes, his own chin. This tiny human was a continuation of his love for Clara. Dr. Carter did a final check on the newborn, a routine he could do in his sleep. He smiled gently at the baby, but then his smile faltered. His eyes narrowed. Tucked into the edge of the baby's pristine white blanket, almost hidden in the folds, was a small object. It was a tiny, meticulously folded piece of paper, sealed in a small, waterproof plastic pouch. It was no bigger than a postage stamp. His first thought was that it was a mistake, a piece of medical waste, perhaps. But its placement was too deliberate, too impossible. It was as if the baby had arrived carrying a message. A chill, completely out of place in the warm room, traced a path down Dr. Carter's spine. His hands, usually so steady, felt a slight tremor as he carefully retrieved the note. He glanced at the new parents. They were lost in their own world, gazing at their son, their faces alight with a happiness so profound it was almost sacred. They had not noticed a thing. Dr. Carter quietly broke the seal on the tiny pouch and unfolded the paper. The world outside the note faded away. The joyful cries, the beeping machines, the whispered congratulations of the nurses. It all became a distant hum. There were only the words. A few simple words, written in a neat, deliberate script. Dr. Carter read the note once, then twice. His professional mask, crafted over decades of practice, cracked and fell away. His face went pale. The blood in his veins turned to ice. He had delivered babies from all walks of life, into situations of joy and sometimes of sorrow. But he had never ever seen anything like this. The words on the paper were not a celebration. They were a confession, a secret delivered at the exact moment it could cause the most devastation. He slowly lifted his gaze from the note, not to the proud, beaming father, but to the new mother. Clara was not looking at her baby. She was looking at him, Dr. Carter. And in her eyes, he did not see the glow of motherhood. He saw pure, unadulterated fear. The note in his hand was not a mistake. It was a time bomb. And it had just been delivered. Just 9 months earlier, Marcus's life was a carefully constructed masterpiece of love and happiness. Their home, a charming house on a quiet, tree-lined street, was not just made of brick and mortar. It was built from shared dreams and whispered promises. The scent of fresh paint still lingered in the air, a testament to the weekends Marcus had spent turning the spare room into a nursery. He had painted the walls a soft, calming blue, the color of a perfect summer sky. He had assembled the crib himself, his brow furrowed in concentration as he deciphered the complicated instructions. Clara had sat nearby, laughing at his struggles, her hand resting on her growing belly. They had imagined their son sleeping peacefully in that crib, dreaming of all the adventures they would have. Their evenings were quiet and filled with a gentle rhythm. Marcus would come home from his job as an architect, and the sight of Clara would make all the stress of the day melt away. They would cook dinner together, their movements a familiar dance in the warm kitchen. Later he would read aloud, his voice a low, comforting rumble. Not to Clara, but to the baby. He told his son stories of far-off lands, of brave knights and magical creatures. He promised him they would build the tallest sandcastles and fly the highest kites. Marcus saw his life as a straight line, leading to a future that was bright and certain. He loved Clara with a depth that felt unshakable. She was his partner, his confidant, his entire world. He trusted her completely. To him, their bond was forged in honesty and mutual respect. Looking back, he could see the small, almost invisible cracks in the facade. There were moments when Clara would grow quiet, a distant look in her eyes. A shadow would pass over her face, a flicker of an emotion he could not name. When he would ask her what was wrong, she would just smile softly, touch his cheek, and blame it on pregnancy hormones. She would say she was just nervous about becoming a mother, about the immense responsibility, and Marcus accepted it. He would hold her close, reassuring her that they were a team, that they could face anything together. He saw her anxiety as a normal part of the journey, a testament to how much she cared. The idea that her silence could be hiding a secret was a thought that never once entered his mind. It was as unimaginable as the sky falling. He was a man who believed in foundations. In his work, he knew that a building was only as strong as the base upon which it was built, and he believed the foundation of his life, of his marriage, was solid rock. He was a good man, a loving husband, and he was about to become a proud father. He had everything he had ever wanted. This was the beautiful, peaceful world Marcus inhabited, a world of truth, love, and endless possibility. A world that was now hanging by a single, fragile thread in the harsh, fluorescent light of a hospital room. Dr. Carter stood frozen for a moment, the tiny piece of paper in his palm feeling as heavy as a block of stone. Every instinct told him to ignore it, to pretend he had never seen it, but the look in Clara's eyes, a desperate plea for a secret to remain kept, forced his hand. He cleared his throat, the sound unnaturally loud in the emotionally charged room. "Marcus," he began, his voice soft but firm. "Could I speak with you for a moment? In the hallway." Marcus turned, his face still glowing with the bliss of a new father. He was confused. "Is something wrong with the baby? Is Clara okay?" "They are both fine. Just a quick word," Dr. Carter insisted, his expression unreadable. Marcus reluctantly followed him out of the room, leaving Clara with the nurses. The hallway was quiet, sterile, and cold. The joyful warmth of the delivery room did not reach this space. Without ceremony, Dr. Carter handed the unfolded note to Marcus. "I found this in your son's blanket," he said simply. "I am very sorry." Marcus took the paper, a small smile of confusion on his face. He thought perhaps it was some kind of congratulatory note from a nurse. He lowered his eyes to read the words. The smile vanished. The color drained from his face. His entire body went rigid. The words were few, but they were sledgehammers, smashing the foundation of his world into dust. In neat, familiar handwriting, Clara's handwriting, the note said, "He is not your son. I am so sorry." He read it again and again. The letters seemed to swim before his eyes, rearranging themselves into nonsense. This could not be real. It was a prank, a mistake, a nightmare from which he would soon awaken. But then, he remembered the shadow in Clara's eyes over the past few months, her quiet anxiety, her fear in the delivery room. It was not the fear of a new mother, it was the fear of being discovered. A wave of nausea washed over him. The world tilted on its axis. He stumbled back against the wall, his hand clutching the note so tightly it crumpled. He pushed past the doctor and walked back into the room on unsteady legs. The nurses fell silent, sensing the sudden shift in the atmosphere. Clara was now sitting up, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. She knew. Marcus held up the crumpled piece of paper. His voice was a choked whisper, unrecognizable even to himself. "Clara, what is this? Tell me it is a lie." A single gut-wrenching sob escaped Clara's lips. It was the only answer he needed. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the soft, innocent cries of the baby boy in the bassinet. The son that was not his son. The love Marcus felt moments before, that pure, unconditional love for his wife and child, did not just disappear. It curdled. It twisted into a cold, hollow agony that settled deep in his chest. He looked at Clara, the woman he had trusted with his entire soul, and saw a stranger. He glanced at the baby, the child he had dreamed of raising, and felt a profound and painful disconnect. He was no longer a husband. He was no longer a father. He was a fool. Without another word, Marcus let the note flutter from his numb fingers. It landed silently on the pristine white hospital floor. He turned his back on his weeping wife, on the doctor, on the child. He walked out of the room, out of the maternity ward, and away from the smoldering ruins of his life. Marcus did not remember the walk from the hospital to his car. He did not remember the turns he took or the traffic lights he stopped at. The familiar streets of his city had become a foreign landscape, the bustling afternoon crowds a silent movie playing outside his window. He was a ghost behind the wheel, his hands moving, his feet pressing the pedals purely out of instinct, while his mind was trapped in a loop, replaying the moment the world fell away. The words on the note were burned into his memory, a permanent scar on his soul. When he finally arrived home, the key felt strange in his hand. The house he had left that morning as an excited, expectant father was now a tomb. He stepped inside, and the silence was a physical blow. It was heavy, suffocating, filled with the ghosts of a happy life that was now a lie. Everywhere he looked, there was a memory waiting to ambush him. On the refrigerator, a picture of him and Clara on their last vacation, their arms around each other, their smiles wide and genuine. On the coffee table, a book of baby names with dozens of options circled and debated. Every object was a monument to a shared dream, a dream he now realized he had been dreaming alone. He walked numbly through the house until he reached the nursery. He stopped at the doorway, unable to step inside. The soft blue walls seemed to mock him. The empty crib, so full of promise just hours ago, was now a symbol of his profound loss. He saw it all in his mind, the future he had planned, the son he had loved before he was even born, the man he was supposed to become. All of it was gone, stolen by a secret he never knew existed. He leaned against the doorframe, a single silent tear finally tracing a path down his cheek. It was a tear not of anger, but of absolute hollow despair. Hours passed. The sun set, and the house grew dark, but Marcus did not move. He did not turn on the lights. He just stood there, a statue carved from grief. Then he heard a key in the lock. The front door opened and closed softly. It was Clara. She found him standing in the shadows. She looked tired, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice fragile. "Please, let me explain." He remained silent, his gaze fixed on the empty crib. "It was a mistake," she continued, her words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "A terrible, stupid mistake from a long time ago, before we were even married. I was scared. I did not know how to tell you. I was so afraid of losing you, of losing everything we built." Marcus finally turned to look at her. His face was a mask of cold emptiness. Her words were just noise, excuses that could never patch the gaping hole in his life. The trust, the very bedrock of their marriage, had been pulverized. "I love you, Marcus," she pleaded, taking a step towards him. "I still love you." "Love?" he said, his voice quiet, devoid of all warmth. "You do not know the meaning of that word." He looked at her, the woman he had shared his life with, and felt nothing but the bitter sting of betrayal. "I want you to pack a bag," he said, his tone flat and final. "And then I want you to leave my house." Her face crumbled. The last glimmer of hope in her eyes died. Through her sobs, she tried to protest, to beg for another chance. But Marcus was unmovable. He had nothing left to give, nothing left to say. He watched as she gathered a few things, her movements jerky and uncertain. And then, she was gone. The front door clicked shut, and the silence that rushed back in was even more profound, more complete. He was truly alone now, adrift in an ocean of silence, with the wreckage of his perfect life floating all around him. The night was dark, and his journey through that darkness had only just begun. Days bled into weeks, and Marcus existed in a thick, grey fog. The world outside continued to turn, but inside his silent house, time had stopped. He moved through the rooms like a phantom, the memories of his old life clinging to him like a shroud. He stopped answering his phone. The worried voices of his friends and family became a distant buzz that he could no longer connect with. How could he explain a pain so deep it did not have words? His work, once his passion, became an impossible chore. As an architect, he built dreams for other people, creating spaces for families to grow and thrive. But his own dream had been demolished, and his creativity was buried in the rubble. The crisp, clean lines he was known for became hesitant and blurred. Deadlines came and went. His focus was shattered, his mind a constant replay of betrayal. His boss, a kind and patient man named Mr. Davies, finally called him into his office. "Marcus, your work has been suffering," he said, his voice laced with genuine concern. "Whatever is happening in your personal life, you need to face it. The firm will support you, but we cannot let this continue indefinitely. You are at a crossroads." That conversation was the breaking point. Marcus went home and walked, for the first time, all the way into the nursery. He sat on the floor in the darkness, the faint light of the street lamp outside casting long shadows across the room. He ran his hand over the soft rug where he had imagined playing with his son. This was it. This was the bottom. He had lost his wife, the child he thought was his, and now he was on the verge of losing his career. He was not just a man grieving a loss. He was a man in the process of erasing himself. He sat there for hours, engulfed by a despair so total it felt like drowning. But then in the deepest, darkest part of that despair, a single hard spark ignited. It was a question. Why? Clara's tearful, vague confession was not enough. It was a bandage on a gaping wound. A mistake from a long time ago. Who was it? Was it a stranger or someone he knew? Why had she carried this secret through their entire marriage? Why did she let him fall in love with a child that was not his? The questions multiplied, each one a small flicker of light in the darkness. The grief, so heavy and passive, began to transform. It sharpened into a cold, clear anger, not a destructive rage, but a motivating force. He realized that he could not build a new life until he understood exactly how the old one had been destroyed. He needed the truth, not for revenge, not to hurt Clara. He needed it for himself. He needed to know the full story so he could finally close the book on this chapter of his life. The not knowing was a poison, and it was killing him slowly. A new kind of determination settled over him. It was a grim and quiet resolve. He stood up, his joints aching from sitting on the hard floor for so long. He walked out of the nursery and, for the first time in weeks, did not look back. He went to his study, wiping the dust off his laptop with the sleeve of his shirt. He opened it, the bright screen illuminating a face that was no longer lost in sorrow, but set with a new, unyielding purpose. His fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment, and then he typed 3 words into the search engine: Best Private Investigator. The search was no longer for a way back. It was for a way through. His search led him to a name, Arthur Vance. The online reviews were not filled with words like aggressive or ruthless. Instead, people described him as thorough, discreet, and compassionate. He was a former detective who now ran a small private practice. It felt right. Marcus made the call. Arthur's office was not the cold, intimidating space Marcus had pictured. It was on the 2nd floor of an old brick building, and it felt more like a cozy library than an investigator's headquarters. The walls were lined with bookshelves filled with worn volumes of history and classic literature. The air smelled of old paper and freshly brewed coffee. It was a room that promised secrets could be shared safely. Arthur Vance himself was a man in his late 60s, with a gentle face, kind eyes, and a full head of white hair. He greeted Marcus with a warm, firm handshake and offered him a seat in a comfortable leather armchair. He did not rush. He simply sat and waited, radiating a quiet competence that immediately put Marcus at ease. For the first time since that horrible day in the hospital, Marcus told the entire story, from beginning to end. He spoke of the joy and anticipation, the perfect life he thought he had. He described the cold shock of reading the note, the hollow emptiness of his home, and the crushing despair that had followed. Saying the words out loud was painful, but it also felt like releasing a pressure that had been building inside him for weeks. Arthur listened without interruption. He did not take notes. He just watched Marcus, his expression one of deep, empathetic understanding. When Marcus finished, the room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Arthur leaned forward. "Thank you for trusting me with this, Marcus," he said, his voice calm and steady. "What you are seeking is more than just a name. You are seeking closure. Many people in your position want revenge, but revenge is a fire that burns the person holding it. Truth, on the other hand, is a key. It unlocks the door and allows you to walk out of the prison of the past." Marcus felt a profound sense of relief wash over him. This man understood. He was not just taking a case, he was offering a path forward. "I will help you find the answers you need," Arthur continued. "We will be methodical, we will be discreet, and we will find the whole story. Not so you can dwell on it, but so you can finally leave it behind." As Marcus left the office, he felt lighter than he had in a month. He was no longer a man drowning alone in the dark. He had found a guide, a steady hand to help him navigate the treacherous waters ahead. The world outside seemed a little brighter, the air a little easier to breathe. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at the screen. It was his sister, Sarah, calling for the 10th time that week. Before, he would have ignored it. But now something had shifted. He was tired of the silence. He was tired of the isolation. He pressed the green button. "Marcus?" Sarah's voice was filled with surprise and worry. "Hey, Sarah," he said. His own voice was hoarse from disuse, but it was there. It was his. "Oh, Marcus, are you okay? I have been so worried." "I am not okay," he answered honestly, "but I think I am going to be. Can we get coffee this weekend?" The joy in his sister's voice was the first genuinely happy sound he had heard in what felt like an eternity. He had a long road ahead, but he was no longer walking it alone. He had an ally in his search for truth, and he was beginning to reconnect with the people who loved him. The investigation had begun, and with it, the first real steps toward a new beginning. The investigation took 2 months. 2 months of Marcus rebuilding his life piece by piece, supported by his sister Sarah and the quiet guidance of Arthur Vance. He went back to work, finding solace in the logic and order of architecture. He started exercising again. He was healing, but he knew he could not be whole until he had the final piece of the puzzle. The day came when Arthur called him to his office. A single, plain, brown envelope lay on the polished wooden desk. "The truth is in there, Marcus," Arthur said gently. "Remember why you are doing this. Not for them, for you." Marcus took the envelope back to his car and sat for a long time before opening it. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady. He pulled out the neatly typed pages. His eyes scanned the report, past the timelines and the collected evidence, searching for the one thing he needed to know. And then he saw it. The name of the biological father. It was not a stranger. It was not a forgotten mistake from the past. The name was David Chen, his business partner, the man he had started his firm with from nothing, the best man at his wedding, his closest friend. A wave of icy coldness washed over Marcus, followed not by rage, but by a terrible, profound clarity. The betrayal was so complete, so monstrous it was almost poetic. All the small inconsistencies, the shared glances between David and Clara that he had ignored, suddenly made sense. The weeks of searching had prepared him. His grief had been forged into something hard and resilient, steel. That evening he made 2 phone calls, first to David. "There is an urgent issue with the Kensington project designs," he said, his voice perfectly level. "Can you meet me at the office in an hour?" Then he called Clara. "It is time we finished our conversation. I know everything. Meet me at the office. David will be there." The office was dark and silent, illuminated only by the glittering panorama of the city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. This was the space he and David had created together, a monument to their ambition and their friendship. Tonight, it would serve as a courtroom. David arrived first, full of concern about the project. Clara arrived moments later, her face pale with dread. When they saw each other, and then saw Marcus waiting for them at the head of the long conference table. The trap was sprung. Panic flickered in their eyes. "Thank you for coming," Marcus began, his voice calm and controlled. He gestured to the two chairs opposite him. "Please, sit down. I wanted us all to be here so we can finally talk about the truth." He slid a copy of Arthur's report across the table. David's confident demeanor evaporated as he read it. Clara began to tremble. Marcus looked at the man who had been his brother. 15 years, David. We built this place from scratch. I trusted you with my dreams, with my future. You stood next to me at my wedding and wished me a lifetime of happiness." His voice was quiet, but every word was a hammer blow. "Was any of it real?" David could not speak. He could not even look up from the report. Then Marcus turned his gaze to Clara. "You told me it was a mistake from long ago, a moment of weakness, but this report says otherwise. It was not a moment. It was a year. You let me paint a nursery for another man's son. You let me hold your hand and cry with joy when he was born. My joy. My son." Clara finally broke, her sobs echoing in the silent, cavernous room. "I was going to tell you," she cried. "I was so scared." "No," Marcus said, his voice cutting through her tears, sharp and final. "You were not scared, you were comfortable, and you were never going to tell me. That note was not for me. It was for David, in case something happened to you during the birth. A final instruction." The full calculated depth of the deception hung in the air, sickening and absolute. Marcus stood up, no longer the victim in this story. He was the judge. "I am not here for apologies. They are worthless. I am here to inform you how this ends. David, our partnership is dissolved. I will have my lawyer contact yours to buy out your shares. As of tonight, you are no longer part of this firm. Clara, our marriage is over. I will be filing for divorce in the morning." He walked to the window, turning his back on them to look out at the city lights. "As an architect, I know that a structure built on a faulty foundation will always collapse. You two built my life on a foundation of lies. Now you can live in the rubble." He walked out of the conference room without a backward glance, leaving them to face the consequences of their actions together. He did not feel anger or sadness. He felt free. The heavy chains of deceit had been broken, and for the first time since that day in the hospital, he could see his future, shining as brightly as the city before him. The aftermath of the confrontation was not a fiery explosion, but a quiet, controlled demolition. Marcus, empowered by the truth and guided by Arthur Vance's steady counsel, moved with a speed and precision that left David and Clara no room to negotiate. The storm had passed, and now was the time to clear the wreckage. The dissolution of his business partnership with David was swift and clinical. Lawyers exchanged documents, figures were agreed upon, and within a month, David Chen's name was removed from the firm he had helped build. But the true consequences went far beyond legal agreements. News of the betrayal, as it always does, traveled in quiet whispers through their professional and social circles. Clients grew distant. Colleagues who once admired David now looked at him with contempt. He had not just lost a business, he had lost his reputation, the currency upon which his entire career was built. He became a ghost in the city he once helped to shape. The divorce from Clara was handled with the same quiet efficiency. Marcus did not seek revenge, he only sought freedom. He saw her one last time across a polished table in a lawyer's office as they signed the final papers. She looked smaller, diminished by the weight of her choices. She tried, one last time, to offer an apology, her voice thick with regret. Marcus looked at her, and for the first time, he felt not anger or pain, but a distant, quiet pity. "It is in the past now, Clara," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "There is nothing left to say. All we can do is move forward from here. I truly hope you and your son find peace." He signed the document, and with the stroke of a pen, a decade of his life was officially over. With the legal ties to his past finally severed, Marcus felt a surge of creative energy he had not experienced in years. The day after the divorce was finalized, he hired a crew to remove the old company sign from their building. A week later, a new one was installed. He had renamed the firm Horizon Architecture. It was a promise to himself, a constant reminder to always look forward to the dawn of a new day. His sister Sarah was his rock through it all, celebrating each small victory with him. Their bond, which had been strained by his period of isolation, was now stronger and deeper than ever before. He was not alone. One sunny afternoon, after the last document was signed and the last connection to his old life was formally cut, Marcus walked out of the lawyer's building and stood on the busy sidewalk. He felt the warmth of the sun on his face and took a deep, clean breath. The noise of the city, which had once felt like an assault, now sounded like a symphony of life and possibility. The storm was over. The ground was clear. It was time to build again. 5 years later. The sun was warm on a perfect Saturday afternoon, casting a golden glow over a bustling city park. On a large blanket spread across a grassy hill, a family was laughing. Marcus pushed a squealing toddler on a swing, his own laughter echoing hers. She was a little girl of 3 with his dark hair and a smile that could erase any lingering shadow. Her name was Lily, his daughter. Watching them from the blanket was Lena, his wife. They had met 2 years ago, introduced by a mutual friend. Theirs was a love that had grown slowly, cautiously at first, but it was built on a foundation of absolute honesty and quiet understanding. With her, Marcus had learned to trust again, not just in others, but in himself. Nearby, his sister Sarah and her family were unpacking a picnic basket, and sitting in a folding chair telling a long animated story to Sarah's eldest son was Arthur Vance. He had long since retired, but he had remained a fixture in Marcus's life, a wise mentor and a beloved friend who now had the honorary title of Grandpa Arthur. As Marcus lifted Lily from the swing and held her small, warm body close, he looked over at the scene on the hill. He saw his wife, his sister, his trusted friend. He saw a life filled with light and genuine connection. He thought for a fleeting moment of the storm he had weathered all those years ago. The pain, the betrayal, and the suffocating darkness now felt like a story he had read about someone else in another lifetime. He realized then that the devastating events of the past had not, in the end, broken him. They had simply been a crucible, a fire that had burned away a life that was not real to make way for one that was. The betrayal had hurt, but it had also taught him the true meaning of strength. The loss had been profound, but it had cleared the path for this real, unshakable, and hard-won joy. He carried Lily back to the blanket and sat down, pulling her into his lap. She giggled, her small hands reaching for a piece of apple from the basket. Lena leaned over and rested her head on Marcus's shoulder, her hand finding his. He looked at his wife, at his daughter, at the family that surrounded him, and a feeling of profound peace settled over him. This was not a life he had been given or had stumbled into. This was a life he had built, with intention, with honesty, and with love. Under the vast, clear blue sky, surrounded by the people who truly knew and loved him, Marcus was finally home. Marcus's story is a powerful reminder that even when our world is shattered by betrayal, the human spirit has an incredible capacity to heal and rebuild. His journey from the depths of despair to a life filled with genuine joy shows us that the truth, while often painful, is the only foundation upon which a new life can be built. He lost what he thought was everything, only to discover what was truly important: honesty, self-respect, and the love of those who stand by you in the darkness. This story is about the pain of a lie, but more importantly, it is about the power of resilience. It teaches us that we are the architects of our own lives, and even after the most devastating storm, we have the strength to clear the ground and design a future that is beautiful, strong, and truly our own. We are so grateful that you joined us for this emotional journey today. Our community is built on sharing stories that touch the heart and remind us of our shared human experience. Now, we would love to hear from you. What part of Marcus's story resonated with you the most? Do you believe that finding the absolute truth is always necessary to heal, or is it sometimes better to move on without all the answers? Please share your thoughts and your wisdom in the comments section below. We read every comment and believe that your perspective could be a source of comfort and strength for someone else who is going through a difficult time. If you were moved by this story of survival and new beginnings, please take a moment to give this video a thumbs up. Liking the video helps our channel to grow and allows these stories of hope to reach more people around the world. And if you have not already, please consider subscribing to our channel and turning on all notifications by ringing the bell icon. By doing so, you will become a cherished member of our community, and you will never miss another one of our weekly stories of life, loss, and the ultimate triumph of the human heart. Thank you once again for your time and your support. We look forward to sharing another powerful story with you very soon. Until then, remember to be kind to yourselves and to each other.